Welcome, dear listeners, to a journey through time and shadows. Today, we unravel a chilling tale buried beneath the soil of Normandy, where history and the supernatural intertwine. Prepare yourself for whispers from the past, secrets long forgotten, and a curse that refuses to die. This is The Dead Speak beneath Normandy's soil. Now, let us step softly into the darkness. They buried me beneath the cold earth, without a name, without a marker, just mud, blood, and forgotten promises. The war had swallowed me whole, or so they thought. But I am not gone, not yet. I am Thomas Green, once a soldier of the British Army, 19 years old and full of dreams that the war cruelly shattered. My body lies somewhere in Normandy, lost beneath a grave of silence. My voice, however, lingers, a whisper trapped between the living and the dead. I speak to you now, not to haunt, but to reveal, to tell a story they wanted buried deeper than my body. The night before the landing, I lay awake in the cramped, damp hold of the landing craft. Outside, the sea churned violently. The cries of men, the rattle of guns, the hum of engines, all a prelude to the storm that was to come. I clenched my rifle and thought of home, of the green fields of England, my mother's smile, and the peaceful life that now seemed a lifetime away. But the war had other plans. When the ramp dropped and the tide swallowed us, I ran forward into the chaos of gunfire and explosions. The air smelled of smoke and death. The ground shook beneath my feet as artillery shells slammed into the sand. Brothers fell beside me, their screams drowned by the thunder. I fought through the madness, every step a fight for survival. But survival was only the beginning of my nightmare. They say the war is full of ghosts, not just the ones that haunt the night, but those who live among the living, cloaked in lies and betrayal. I learned that truth too late. Before the sun rose on the second day, I discovered a secret that would cost me everything. A betrayal so deep it stained the very soil I now lie beneath. But I will not rest until the world knows. The morning light was weak and gray as I crawled through the tangled underbrush, every nerve screaming with exhaustion and fear. The roar of battle had faded into an eerie silence, broken only by the distant cries of the wounded. I was no longer just a soldier. I was a hunted man, carrying knowledge that could destroy lives, including my own. That secret, hidden in a crumpled letter I found in the pocket of a fallen officer, spoke of betrayal at the highest levels. Plans to sacrifice entire battalions to cover up a deal made in the shadows, far from the front lines. Men like me were expendable, pawns in a game of power and greed. I had to get that letter to command, to warn them. But every step I took was dogged by unseen eyes. Footsteps echoed behind me, voices whispered in the dark, and the forest seemed alive with danger. The war wasn't just fought with guns and bombs, it was fought with lies, secrets, and blood debts. As I stumbled into a ruined farmhouse, I thought I might find refuge. But inside, the walls whispered their own horrors, the aftermath of a massacre that no one would ever speak of. I found a diary, stained with dirt and blood, belonging to a young woman named Elise. Her words painted a portrait of fear and desperation, trapped between the warring forces, powerless to save those she loved. Reading her last entry, I felt a cold hand grip my heart. If anyone finds this, know that the truth must live, even if we do not. That night, as I lay hidden beneath the broken roof, I realized my fight was not just for survival, but for memory, for the voices buried beneath Normandy's soil, including my own. The forest around me grew darker as night swallowed the day. Shadows twisted between the trees and the wind carried voices, soft, urgent, calling out from nowhere and everywhere. I couldn't tell if they were real or the ghosts of my weary mind, but the whispers seemed to pull me deeper into the woods, as if the earth itself was trying to speak. I clutched the diary tighter, feeling Elise's fear and hope mingling with my own. Suddenly, a movement caught my eye, a flicker of light far ahead like a candle burning in a tomb. Curiosity and dread warred within me. Against my better judgment, I followed the glow, each step crunching on brittle leaves. The light led me to a small clearing where a circle of stones lay half buried in moss. The air was thick with a strange energy, ancient and restless. Then I heard it clearly, a voice whispering my name. Thomas. My heart pounded. I spun around, but no one was there. The voice came again, this time closer and more urgent. You must remember, they hid more than secrets beneath this land. They hid sins. A cold chill ran down my spine. I realized then that the war had unearthed something far darker than battlefields and bloodshed. I was not just fighting for my life, I was fighting for a truth that could shake the very foundations of history itself. And the dead? They were waiting for me. Dawn broke slowly, but my mind was heavy with unrest. The whispered warning echoed through me, making sleep impossible. I knew I had to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The ruined farmhouse had more secrets than I expected. Behind a loose brick in the fireplace, I found a hidden compartment containing brittle documents, yellowed papers scrawled with codes and names. One name stood out, Von Richter, a name whispered among the highest ranks, yet absent from official records. The documents spoke of a secret pact made before the war, a shadow alliance between enemies trading lives and territories for power beyond the battlefield. Elise's diary suddenly took on new meaning. Her fear wasn't just for her family or the fighting. She had stumbled upon the pact, and that was why her village was destroyed. I realized then that the war wasn't just chaos, it was calculated sacrifice. And I was trapped in the middle of a conspiracy that could change the course of history. But the deeper I dug, the clearer it became. Someone didn't want the truth to see the light. Footsteps echoed outside. I hid the papers and prepared for the confrontation I knew was coming. In the shadows of Normandy, the dead were not the only ones watching, and the living were just as dangerous. The footsteps grew louder, deliberate, echoing like the heartbeat of the forest itself. I held my breath as the door creaked open, revealing a figure cloaked in shadow. Looking for something, Thomas? The voice was cold, familiar, a ghost from the past I hoped never to face again. It was Captain Reinhardt, a man whose name was whispered in the darkest tales of the war. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, pierced through me. You don't know what you're meddling with, he warned. Some truths are buried for a reason. I clutched Elise's diary and the coded papers. I'm uncovering what was hidden, I said firmly. The world deserves to know. He laughed, a sound without warmth. Then you're already dead. Before I could react, the shadows shifted and cold fingers seemed to wrap around my soul. Visions flooded my mind, trenches filled with screams, faces twisted by fear, and the hidden pack's dark trick. The past was alive, and it was reaching out to drag me into its depths. I realized then that the war's ghosts were not just memories. They were sentinels, guarding secrets that could destroy everything. And I was standing at the threshold. The forest felt alive with shadows, pressing in around me as I fled from Captain Reinhardt's cold warning. My breath came in ragged gasps, the weight of the diary and the coded papers heavy in my bag. But heavier still was the growing terror inside. The woods twisted and tangled like the maze of secrets I was uncovering. Secrets not meant for the living. The distant flicker of that strange light I had seen before drew me again, pulling me deeper. My heart hammered. Every step felt like an echo in a tomb. Suddenly the ground beneath me shifted and I stumbled, falling into darkness. When I opened my eyes, I found myself inside a narrow stone passage, damp and cold. The air was thick, filled with a faint murmur. Voices too soft to understand, but too persistent to ignore. I rose slowly, brushing dust and cobwebs from my clothes, and realized I had fallen into a hidden cellar beneath the ruins. The walls were lined with ancient carvings, symbols that seemed both foreign and familiar, telling stories of blood and betrayal. At the center of the vault lay a large stone altar, stained dark with age and something more sinister. The whispers grew louder, forming words that chilled my blood. They lied. They traded souls for power. They buried the truth beneath the bones of the innocent. My fingers trembled as I opened Elise's diary to the last entry. Her handwriting was frantic, desperate. The pact was sealed here in blood and fire. They curse this land, and those who break the silence will join the dead. A sudden cold breeze swept through the vault, extinguishing the small candle I had lit. Darkness swallowed me whole. In that blackness, I felt hands, cold, grasping, reaching from the shadows, pulling me toward the altar. Fear gripped me like a vice, but I forced myself to speak aloud. "Who are you? What do you want?" The voices answered as one, a chorus of the lost. "Remember, reveal, free us." And then, as if the earth itself exhaled, the vault trembled. Dust fell, stones shifted, and a hidden door groaned open, revealing a spiral staircase leading down, deeper into the darkness. I knew then my journey was far from over. The spiral staircase wound down endlessly, its cold stone walls slick with moisture. Every step echoed in the oppressive silence, each breath I took mingling with the ancient dust that hung heavy in the air. I clutched the diary tighter, feeling as though it was the only tether to the world above, a fragile lifeline between sanity and madness. Deeper and deeper I descended until the air grew colder, heavier, as if the very shadows pressed upon me. The faint whispering voices returned, now clearer, their mournful tones weaving through the darkness. At last, the stairs opened into a vast cavern, dimly lit by flickering torches set in iron sconces along the walls. The smell of damp earth and old decay filled my nostrils, and I shivered despite my thick coat. The cavern's floor was scattered with bones, human and animal, bleached white and cracked, silent witnesses to the horrors that had unfolded here. In the center stood a massive stone sarcophagus, its lid carved with strange symbols and warnings. I approached cautiously, the whispers urging me forward. Opening the heavy lid revealed a hollow interior, but inside lay no corpse, only a cryptic message etched in Old Latin. Quis custodiet ipsos custodes? Who will guard the guards themselves? A chill ran down my spine. The question was a puzzle, a warning, but from whom? Suddenly, a low rumble shook the cavern, dust falling from the ceiling. The air thickened and the shadows grew longer, creeping like living things toward me. A voice, barely audible but filled with rage, whispered into my ear, "You seek to uncover what should remain buried. Prepare to face the judgment of the forgotten." Panic surged through me, but I forced my legs to move, retreating toward the stairs. But the path was no longer the same. The walls seemed to shift, trapping me in a labyrinth of darkness. The whispers became screams, echoing from every corner. Leave or join us forever. I was caught between history and horror, and the abyss below beckoned. Trapped in the twisting maze beneath the ancient battlefield, my heart hammered in my chest like a war drum. Every corner seemed to breathe. Every shadow stretched and twisted into grotesque shapes. The walls whispered secrets, half-forgotten cries of soldiers who had met their end in this forsaken place. I forced myself to focus, following the faintest glimmers of light that flickered like distant stars in the black void. The diary, now damp from the cold air, pressed against my chest, my only guide through the darkness. Suddenly, a chilling scream pierced the silence, raw, desperate, echoing through the labyrinth. I stopped, paralyzed with fear, the sound clawing at my mind. It was not human. It was something else, something older, born from the earth soaked with blood and sorrow. A faint glow appeared ahead, a small alcove carved into the stone wall. Inside, a rusted iron box lay half buried in dirt. Trembling, I opened it. Inside was a tattered letter, written in a hand long lost to time. The letter spoke of a forbidden ritual, one meant to bind the souls of the fallen to the land, to prevent their stories from fading into oblivion. But the ritual had gone wrong. The dead were trapped, restless, angry. As I read, the shadows around me thickened, closing in like a living fog. The voices rose to a deafening chorus, and I realized the spirits were trying to tell me something. They weren't just trapped. They were warning me. The diary's final words flashed in my mind. To free the dead, one must confront the darkness within. A terrible truth dawned. To survive, to uncover the past, I must face not only the ghosts of history, but the demons lurking inside myself. The labyrinth seemed endless, but with every step a strange clarity settled in my mind. The spirits weren't just restless. They were desperate to be heard. Their stories were woven into the very stones beneath my feet. As I moved forward, ghostly apparitions began to flicker in the corners of my vision. Soldiers clad in tattered uniforms, faces blurred by time, their eyes filled with sorrow and rage. They didn't speak words, but emotions. Pain, betrayal, loss flooded my senses. One figure emerged more clearly, a young soldier clutching a blood-stained letter. His mouth moved silently, begging for justice, for the truth to be uncovered. I reached out and the diary pulsed in response, as if acknowledging their plea. The ritual's failure had bound these souls to this place, cursed to relive their last moments, unable to rest. Suddenly, the ground beneath me trembled. The cavern walls cracked, revealing a hidden passage that hadn't been there before. The air was thick with ancient power, beckoning me deeper. I hesitated, knowing that crossing this threshold meant confronting horrors, not just from history, but from the darkest corners of the human soul. With a deep breath, I stepped forward into the unknown. The hidden passage was narrow and damp, walls slick with ancient moss and cold moisture. Every step echoed like a heartbeat in the suffocating silence. The deeper I ventured, the heavier the air became, thick with the weight of countless untold stories. At the passage's end, a vast chamber opened before me, a cathedral of shadows. The flicker of torchlight revealed skeletal remains arranged in patterns, as if part of a grim ritual. Symbols etched in blood stained the stones, whispering forgotten names. In the center, a stone altar bore a cracked and ancient book. I approached cautiously, feeling the room pulse with unseen energy. The pages turned on their own, revealing passages written in languages long dead, describing rites to free trapped souls. But then a voice, low, guttural, and haunting, filled the chamber. It spoke of betrayal, of warriors sacrificed for secrets too dark to surface. The spirits were bound not just by ritual, but by the sins of those who sought power through bloodshed. I realized then that the darkness I faced was not only external, but a mirror to human cruelty and despair. To bring peace, I had to unravel the twisted web of history, no matter the cost. The diary trembled again as if urging me onward. The journey was far from over. The air grew colder as I traced the symbols on the altar, their jagged shapes seeming to writhe beneath my fingertips. The voices of the restless dead rose in a chorus, whispers merging into anguished cries. They spoke of promises broken and blood spilled in secret pacts made under the veil of night. I saw visions flicker before me, shadowy figures exchanging veiled threats, soldiers turned against their own, and leaders whose thirst for power doomed countless lives. These ghosts were not mere victims. They were echoes of betrayal, trapped in an endless cycle of pain and vengeance. The diary's pages glowed faintly, revealing a hidden script, a confession written in the hand of a commander whose ambition had shattered alliances and brought ruin. The weight of his sins had cursed this ground, binding the souls of the fallen to relive their torment. Suddenly the chamber trembled, dust falling like ash. The ghosts swirled around me, their faces twisted with rage and sorrow, demanding that the truth be told, not just for their sake, but to prevent history from repeating its darkest moments. With a trembling hand, I reached for the book. The path forward was clear. Uncover the truth buried beneath layers of lies, and in doing so, perhaps release the souls chained by betrayal. As I opened the ancient book fully, the room darkened, shadows deepening into shapes that danced on the stone walls. The air thickened with a sinister presence. The confession within was more than a tale of betrayal. It was the genesis of a curse cast upon those who dared to defy fate. The commander's words spilled onto the pages like a poison, a desperate plea for redemption, twisted into a vow of eternal damnation. He had sealed his own fate and those of his men by invoking dark rituals, binding their souls to the land through blood and sorrow. Visions flashed violently. A battlefield soaked with rain and blood, warriors falling one after another, screams lost beneath the storm. The curse had trapped their spirits in a purgatory where time folded back on itself, forcing endless suffering. I felt the weight of centuries pressing down on me, a crushing force demanding that I finish what was begun. To break the curse, I would need to uncover forgotten rituals, face the shadows of history's darkest hour, and risk losing myself to the same darkness. The diary's pages glowed brighter, revealing a final message: only truth can free the dead. The deeper I delved, the more the past seemed to seep into the present. The walls of the chamber whispered secrets, their voices thin and brittle like dry leaves stirring in a forgotten forest. Every shadow held a fragment of memory. Every gust of wind carried a mournful lament. I uncovered a hidden compartment beneath the altar, revealing a bundle of letters tied with a faded red ribbon. Their ink was smeared and pages brittle, but the words told a story of forbidden love between a soldier and a noble woman, one that crossed enemy lines and defied loyalty. Their romance had been a spark of light in the darkness, but it ignited a chain reaction of treachery. The letters revealed a plot to betray not just armies, but entire nations. The dead had been caught in a web of deceit, woven by passion and ambition, doomed to relive their final days in an endless nightmare. As I read, the whispers grew louder, swirling around me like a tempest. The chamber pulsed with energy, both sorrowful and angry. The spirits were pleading for justice, but also warning of the dangers that lay ahead. To bring peace, I had to walk the path they never dared tread, unravel the tangled web of love, betrayal, and blood that stained history itself. The letters led me deeper into the labyrinth of history's secrets. I traveled to the ruins of an ancient monastery, a place whispered to be cursed, where many who sought the truth had vanished without a trace. The locals spoke of shadows that moved on their own, and cries echoing through the night. As I stepped into the crumbling halls, the weight of centuries pressed upon me. Faint outlines flickered in the dim light, faces twisted with despair and fear. These were the forgotten souls, those erased by time and betrayal, trapped in limbo between life and death. In the silence, I heard the faintest murmur, a voice calling my name, urging me to look beyond what the eyes could see. The air grew thick with dread as the ground beneath trembled, revealing hidden chambers beneath the monastery. Inside, ancient relics lay scattered, symbols of faith and war intertwined. Among them, a broken locket with a faded portrait, a relic of the soldier and the noble woman whose love had sparked the curse. The past was alive here, a living shadow that refused to fade. To To survive the night, I had to confront the darkness and the truth it guarded, no matter the cost. The hidden chamber was thick with dust and the scent of decay, yet its walls bore inscriptions glowing faintly in the dark. The symbols spoke of an ancient ritual, one meant to sever the curse, but only at a dire cost. The soldier and noblewoman's love had been the spark, but the ritual required a sacrifice to undo the damage wrought by their passion and betrayal. I gathered the relics, the broken locket, a silver dagger etched with strange runes, and the faded letters bound in red. The air seemed to pulse around me, as if the very spirits of the past awaited my next move. Lighting candles, I began the incantation, my voice barely more than a whisper. Shadows coalesced, twisting and writhing like living things. The room grew colder, and I felt unseen eyes watching from every corner. As the final words left my lips, a sudden chill surged through my body, and the ground beneath me trembled violently. The spirits of the cursed souls appeared, their faces contorted with pain and hope. They reached out, desperate for release. I realized then that breaking the curse meant more than just freeing them. It demanded confronting the darkness within myself. The ritual was only the beginning. The ritual left the chamber trembling, and a heavy silence followed, as if the world itself was holding its breath. But the peace was fragile. As I made my way out of the monastery, I felt eyes trailing me, unseen and unyielding. The whispers returned, more urgent and angry than before. Shadows stretched longer and darker, clinging to my every step. The spirits were restless, not all willing to accept the release I offered. Some thirsted for revenge, others for justice, but all were bound to the curse's lingering power. Night after night, their voices haunted my dreams, dragging me deeper into a nightmare where history and reality blurred. I saw the battlefield anew, the screams, the betrayals, the blood spilled not just on soil but on souls. With each vision, the weight grew heavier. The past was not done with me, nor with the world. The curse was alive, spreading like a dark tide, threatening to drown all in shadow. I had to find the source, the heart of the curse, before it consumed everything. Driven by the relentless visions, I ventured into the heart of the dark forest that bordered the ancient battlefield. The trees loomed like silent sentinels, their twisted branches clawing at the sky. Every step felt heavier, as if the earth itself resisted my presence. At the forest center, I found a circle of stones, ancient and worn, yet pulsating with a sinister energy. The ground beneath the stones was scorched and cracked, remnants of a fire long extinguished, but never forgotten. Here lay the source of the curse, an altar stained with blood and betrayal, where the soldier's final act of desperation had bound the souls forever. The ritual had been incomplete, the darkness unresolved. As I approached, whispers turned to screams, shadows converged into shapes, faces of those who had suffered, their eyes filled with pain and accusation. They demanded reckoning, a truth long denied. To break the curse, I had to make a choice, sacrifice myself to end the suffering, or leave the darkness to consume the world. The weight of history pressed down, and I realized that some secrets came with a price far greater than I had imagined. The weight of the choice pressed down upon me like the heavy stones beneath my feet. To end the curse, I had to surrender something precious, my life, my soul, or perhaps both. The voices of the restless spirits echoed in my mind, pleading for release, for peace, for an end to their eternal torment. With trembling hands, I reached for the silver dagger. Its blade gleamed cold and sharp, a tool of both death and salvation. The ancient words from the forgotten scrolls returned to me, guiding the ritual that would bind my fate to theirs. As I prepared to enact the final rite, the forest around me seemed to close in, the air thick with shadows and sorrow. The faces of the cursed watched silently, their eyes reflecting hope and despair. In that moment, I understood that sacrifice was not just about loss. It was a bridge between worlds, a promise that the living could heal the wounds of the dead. With a steady breath, I began the ritual, knowing that the dawn might never greet me again. As the first light of dawn pierced through the dense canopy, a silence unlike any before fell upon the forest. The air felt lighter, the shadows retreating as if banished by an unseen force. I lay motionless, my body weak, but my spirit strangely at peace. The restless voices were gone, replaced by a profound stillness that spoke of finality. The curse, once a living nightmare, was unraveling thread by thread. Slowly I rose to my feet, feeling the weight that had burdened me for so long lifting away. The faces that had haunted my dreams now appeared before me one last time, no longer angry but grateful. Their eyes held a light I had never seen before, a silent thank you from beyond the veil. The earth beneath the altar was no longer scorched but alive, blooming with new growth as if the land itself had been healed. I understood then that the sacrifice had not been in vain. The past could rest, and the future could finally begin free of its shadow. But as I turned to leave, a whisper lingered on the wind, an echo that warned me some darkness never truly fades. Though the curse was broken, the echoes of the past lingered. The forest no longer screamed with agony, but whispers still drifted on the wind, reminders that history's shadows never fully vanish. I returned to the village, changed by what I had seen and done. The faces of the fallen haunted my dreams, but their burden was lighter now, shared by one who had dared to cross the veil. As I sat by the hearth, pen in hand, I wrote their story, not just to remember, but to warn. For history is never just the past. It is a living force shaping the present and haunting the future. And somewhere, in the silence between the trees, the dead still speak. Their voice is a reminder that some stories, once told, never truly end.